Hello and welcome to the 9 News Business Buzz, where we take up important business issues, how they impact you and our economy. I'm your host, Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global. I'm here with my partner, Ed Sealover, from the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of the Sum and Substance. Ed, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm ready to talk about things today.
You know, there are no lack of important issues that we are taking up. Tariffs are top of mind for a lot of folks here in Colorado and around the nation these days. The Trump administration is proposing some pretty hefty fees. For folks who don't understand it, you know, tariffs are like adding fees to stuff we buy from overseas. And oftentimes people don't necessarily know how much stuff actually comes into Colorado and the nation from other countries. But there is a lot of discussion amongst the Trump administration about adding tariffs, not only to the 10% of tariffs that were added to Chinese goods, the 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports, no matter where you're from, the reciprocal tariffs, a discussion that's happening back in Washington, and the 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada that could be implemented as soon as this month. There's also the possibility of a threat of a trade war with the European Union countries over everything from German cars to Italian cheese to French wines. The reality, Ed, is this could have a real impact on Colorado consumers. What's your thoughts? What are you seeing and what are you hearing out there in the business community?
Well, I'll tell you, the way that I'm looking at this is a little bit less from consumers and a little bit more on how this could impact jobs here in Colorado. And I think you need to step back from the tariffs discussion to just think about international trade in this sense, and that anybody who manufactures a good, as well as farmers and service producers, need a market to sell that into. You will start local. Maybe I'm selling throughout my city, my county, even throughout the state, and you've got to grow. And if you're going to grow the business and you're going to add jobs, and that is how we at the Chamber like to think about any business policy, is what can you do to add jobs and give more people in this state gainful employment? And if you're going to grow your business and add jobs, you've got to expand your markets. And eventually that's going to take you out of this country and into international markets. That's one thing. But the trick is, to play in international markets, you've got to be playing under some pretty fair rules. And you've got to make sure there's nothing too regressive on how that market is taxing you and how that market is regulating you. The threat with the tariff wars that are breaking out now is that those countries will retaliate for what America is doing. And that means that Colorado businesses who make things, and if you work for a Colorado business where you're on a floor somewhere making things, this affects you. Those businesses are going to get hit with big fees and big regulations in other countries. They're not going to be able to grow. In fact, those that might already be selling into other countries right now may have to recess their sales a little bit, and we're going to see potential jobs slowing or even job losses if companies lose their toeholds in other markets because their goods simply become too expensive over there in retaliation for what America is doing with its tariffs.
Now, most economists will tell you that, generally speaking, tariffs are inflationary, meaning they're going to be higher costs for the things that we buy here at home. Now, some argue that this is a tactic by the Trump administration to negotiate for things like increased defense spending in the EU, for better trade practices between the U.S. and China. Who knows whether that's reality or not, but the reality, I think, for most folks that are out there wondering how this could impact them, the bottom line is that it could be more expensive for the things that you buy each and every day that you may not even realize come in from overseas. And the point you raised, Ed, about how this can impact our businesses, whether it be our farmers or aerospace or tech companies that export, is a very real challenge as well in terms of the ability to be competitive and to keep doing business internationally for our folks who do business here in Colorado.
Absolutely. And people think about the cost of consumers, what tariffs might be. I think there's another important thought to that. What is the cost of business going to be? Very rarely do you have a company who is making products able to source everything it uses in that manufacturing from within America. And so if you are going to be paying more for anything from your steel to just some of the products and some of the electronics that might be coming from overseas, that is going to raise your prices here at home as well. And that's going to be a tough hit here, especially as we're spending this entire Colorado legislative session talking about how do we reduce costs for Colorado, for cost of living. If you're going to have to be paying more for the inputs to your materials, even those that you sell here in Colorado, not the ones that you're selling in overseas markets, that is going to have an impact on how much you can sell and, frankly, maybe how many people you can employ if your sales are going down, because the consumers have realized they've hit the point of elasticity and will not pay more for your goods.
Now let's turn our attention to another industry that could be impacted by tariffs as well, and that's the restaurant industry in Colorado. As you know, Ed, very well, they continue to face challenges due to rising labor costs, and there's a new bill down at the state capitol that is proposing to change the wage regulations for tipped employees. There's a broad coalition, I believe, that is seeking to reduce wage requirements for its already highly compensated bar and wait staff. What's the story here, Ed?
So the story here goes back to 2016 and 2019. 2016 was when state voters decided we were going to raise the state's minimum wage, and we were going to do it every year by inflationary methods after that. 2019 was when the state legislature decided, you know what? Cities can raise their wages, their minimum wage, above the state's level. And cities took that on there. And there is a thing in the minimum wage called the tip credit that basically says if you are a tipped professional, that's typically a bartender or a restaurant server, you can get paid $3.02 an hour less than the overall minimum wage can pay. It's one thing at the state level. That means with the state wages right now, they're getting paid about $11.79 an hour if you're tipped credit. In Denver, the wage is $4 an hour higher. And so you're jacking up the costs for what you're paying your tip servers there. Why is this a problem? Well, you might say they're already the lowest paid people in restaurants. Actually, they're not. With tips, the Colorado Restaurant Association estimates that the average restaurant tipped server is getting about $39 to $42 an hour versus cooks who are getting paid $19 to $23 an hour. That's causing problems, one, for expenses when you have to raise the wage levels of the people who are already getting paid a lot. And by the way, that's going to turn into higher menu prices, which means their pay level will actually go up since they're tipped on a percentage of the menu prices. And two, that's causing problems with the back of the house staff, the cooks and the dishwashers, who can't get as much money and who are now saying, look, I'm not real happy working in this industry, in this place where these folks in my own workplace are making so much more than I am.
Now, Ed, one thing I love about you is you look at it in terms of the different viewpoints on it, both pros, those that align perhaps with the chamber, but also the opposition or vice versa. What's the arguments against this?
The argument against this is simple. House Bill 1208, and I don't think I said exactly what this does, it allows the cities where the minimum wage is higher, that's Denver, Boulder, Edgewater, and Boulder County, to pay for employers to pay their tipped servers at the same level as other cities without a higher wage. So it's $11.79 minimum wage across the state. That's going to be as much as a $4 reduction in the minimum wage that Denver restaurants have to pay servers and bartenders. And that in itself is the opposition right there. Folks are coming out, especially workers' advocates, saying, wait a minute, this is at its base level, a pay cut for workers. Yes, maybe this might help restaurants to help them balance their books. And mind you, we're seeing this at a time when 22% of Denver restaurants have closed since 2022, a lot because of raised costs. But labor advocates are saying this basically means you're advocating for someone to get a pay cut. And that's the plain and simple opposition.
That's a very tough, that sounds like it's going to be quite a debate down at the Capitol on this issue. Now, are the restaurants that are advocating for this bill, are they talking about how they're likely to use any savings, if this were to pass, in terms of, are they going to reinvest in the company? Are they going to use it for more job creation? Like, what are they saying about how they can better use those funds if this bill passes?
First of all, a lot of them say most of the money that would be, quote unquote, saved from this isn't going to be saved. It's just going to be transferred to other employees. They're going to move that to higher salaries for the cooks and the dishwashers and folks who are not getting paid at nearly the same level as tip servers are at this point. They also say one of the things we've had to do with rising expenses is we've had to cut hours. There have been a number of places that cut lunch, that only serve dinner now. We've had to cut back on the number of people we employ here. So we could invest this in growing staff, growing hours, growing more opportunities for more people to make money.
Now, we've heard a lot about the restaurant closures. You mentioned the rate earlier. How significant of a problem is this issue to the closure of restaurants? I mean, because at the end of the day, right, the goal, right, is to try to drive more restaurant success, give them the ability to create more jobs, to invest in their businesses, to grow more generally. How is this impacting, from the conversations you've had, the ability for these restaurants to stay open and to stay in business?
The reason restaurants are closing is pretty simple. Costs are outweighing what they're bringing in right now. And you can look at that in a number of different ways. That involves the changes of people not working downtown and not having restaurants that are serving big crowds at lunches. But if you bring down restaurants' costs of operating, that is going to help, plain and simple. And this is one way to do it. There are other ways that they're looking at doing it too. There's another bill that was recently introduced that would allow restaurants to not have to pay credit cards based on the percentage of tips and taxes that they're paying. They usually have to pay like a 3% swipe fee to credit cards. And this would say, no, in that money that they're calculating that fee on, you can't include tips and taxes. What it is it's various ways that restaurants are looking to save money. But let's face it, most restaurants will say 50 to 60% of their budget goes to labor and to salary costs. And so if you go after this tipped area, and frankly, tip servers are for full-service restaurants are the majority of their workers as well, that is a big way to save money.
So basically, it comes down to helping restaurants stay competitive, to stay in business, to keep adding jobs. And I don't want to say versus, but versus this idea of having a livable wage for employees that the labor organizations feel could be under attack. So I think you're going to be talking about this. I think we're both going to be talking about this for some time. So, but we got to move on to the next topic, Ed. Finally, let's focus on the state of downtown Denver. It's related to the restaurant industry in the Central Business District. We've seen some closures and challenges in recent times. A number of downtown restaurants have recently sent a letter to Denver Mayor Mike Johnston urging actions to fix its decline. They're talking about everything from dealing with folks who are on fentanyl to, human waste to, just other crimes that are really bringing down the state of downtown Denver, and that it needs to be fixed now because they're worried about the ability of their businesses to survival. I had a chance to sit down with Denver Councilman Chris Hines beforehand to get his perspective on what's happening in downtown Denver. Here's what he had to say.
Public safety definitely means our police. Public safety definitely means alternatives to the police. Any full solution of public safety, we as community members also have to have some skin in the game. Community is where we give a little bit to the collective and we get more in return. So I would, I'd suggest that fair amount of our business owners feel like they're giving a bunch and they're not getting enough in return. And so the small business supports and business supports are one thing that we can do to help. Another is to continue to have awareness initiatives so that residents in the center city and visitors to the center city, if they identify something that they don't believe is right, they know exactly how to share that information with the city and allow us to deploy the best resources quickly.
Now, basically, Hines went on to say that violent crime is down overall, that he understands that there have been a number of high-profile incidents, which include, by the way, a few people who've been stabbed and murdered, and that they have to continue to listen to the concerns of businesses and ensure that the Denver Police Department has the resources it needs to adequately address the challenges and problems in downtown Denver. What do you think on that, Ed? What's your thoughts on what's happening downtown?
I think the key is that what you just mentioned, businesses need to be listened to. It's an interesting situation right now where they're saying we're seeing problems in downtown, but it's not changing? The cost of doing business downtown. Nobody's lowering lease prices downtown, and nobody is saying, unless this bill that we discussed earlier passes, that, hey, downtown's got its problems, maybe you can cut some of your costs for operating personnel. So I think this has just got to go into the big bucket of, hey, please listen to us, we need some help here. I think we deal mostly with what they say to the state, but clearly they have things to say to the city too.
Crime is, look, it affects business. Safety and the economy go hand in hand. And if crime is happening or people believe or perceive it is, that's a very real threat to any economic vibrancy, especially in such places as the Central Business District. I was talking to a lady the other day who told me how she has a hair salon, and there was someone who came in off the streets, ran into her shop, stole some merchandise, and then ran out. And in her case, now, she didn't report it, and that's another issue. It's like reported versus unreported crime in terms of crime rates. But she didn't report it. She ran after the lady to get her stuff back, and she did. But she never reported that crime. So when we talk about violent crime and the impacts on businesses, I think it's important to remember that the crime that's reported is not always all the crime that's actually happening. So it's not always just a matter of the perception is reality. You know, one of the interesting parts about this is both Councilman Hines and I think in a response from the mayor's office, they've indicated that they have somewhere through a bond of over $500 million that they're planning to bring in to help revitalize the Central Business District. You think that's enough, or you think it'll be too late?
I think any money that you put toward is helpful, and I think some of that money going toward public safety is going to be key. Just to go to the story that you just discussed here, you're talking about violent crime, but that also involves retail theft, and retail theft has become an increasingly huge problem for companies since the pandemic, particularly. We're seeing more efforts at the legislature this year to pass bills that would make it tougher for people who go in, steal mass goods from stores, and these are rarely downtown salons. These are maybe your Ace Hardwares, your bigger Home Depots and stuff, and then try to resell them online are getting cracked down on a little bit more, and the state is looking to make it harder for them to do that. I think the issue of retail theft is going to go hand in hand with the issue of violent crime when you're talking about costs that are going to push businesses out if something isn't done about it.
Yeah, retail theft, auto theft, whether they need to look at some of the crimes that have been downgraded to misdemeanors and re-upgrade those to felonies. And I think whether the city and county of Denver really shows its community they're serious about getting public safety under control in the Central Business District so that people from all over, whether you live in Denver or whether you're from a suburban neighborhood or whether you're visiting, want to go in, want to shop, want to eat, want to enjoy all that the downtown Denver has to offer. And we know, Ed, having lived there for so many years, a Central Business District, a downtown Denver, the economic vibrancy is so important to the overall economy, not just of Denver, but of all of Colorado. And I think that's important that they got to get this right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, Ed, as always, that's all the time we have for today. We've talked about everything from tariffs to wages for tipped employees to the state of downtown Denver. We've covered a lot. Be sure to catch the Business Buzz next week. We always aim to help you get informed, to be engaged, and to get ahead of the game. For the 9 News Business Buzz, for my partner Ed Sealover, I'm Ryan Frazier. Till next time.